So the movie opens on a scene to set the stage, and bring in the idea of predators versus prey early on, showcasing how this society survived in the past with predator versus prey, followed by a sudden tonal shift to the kids' play to emphasize just how far they have come since then. Now, this movie actually starts off pretty good, and there is plenty to appreciate beyond just the comedy in the introduction of this movie. Looking at it objectively, the first few chapters aren't bad. However, there is only a lot to appreciate early on because we're dealing with incredibly low stakes right now and very few characters. It'll take a little while before things start to completely fall apart, so buckle in, so to speak, bear with me.
Nope.
There's a lot of charming detail put into this play version of this world's history, like this kid standing on the wrong spot because he was waving to his parents, the misspelling, the leopard kid being in a tiger costume. It's all very intentionally amateurish to evoke the kind of slapdash production you'd get in actual primary school plays. Honestly, there's not much to criticize negatively about this scene. It gets across everything it wants to quickly with some good jokes thrown in, and you clearly understand that Judy is a dreamer seconds after meeting her. It's a strong opening, and the first time I saw this movie, my expectations were pretty high just based on this first scene.
Thank you and good night.
Unfortunately, then it continued.
Your dad, me, your 275 brothers and sisters.
So she follows him back behind the stalls and sticks up for this kid. She's determined, bordering on stubborn to the point where she simply disregards her parents trying to steer her away from policing.
It's great to have dreams.
Yeah, just as long as you don't believe in them too much. Where'd the heck she go?
And she's willing to put herself in danger to stand up for those in it because she wants to prove herself and protect people. So good, we've got the foundation of her character. Let's hope the movie sticks to that.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
From there, we jump forwards 15 years to her having signed up for police training.
Enormous criminal!
So she falls and fails over and over, but manages to stick with it until she eventually equals and outperforms the others. Now the boxing match. The boxing rematch, as a matter of fact. This is incredibly odd to me. Yes, it is funny to put a bunny up against such a huge opponent, but in reality they would send officers against suspects they are suited to be able to catch. Obviously you don't send an elephant to go catch a mouse because all the mouse needs to do is run away to Little Rodentia and it's escaped. Which is what we literally see happen in this movie. Not to mention there would be a huge risk of an animal that big accidentally stepping on the suspect they're chasing. Surely she should be up against a foe of similar size, someone she's suited to be able to take down. And if the idea is to purposefully put them up against an opponent they aren't suited to fight to test their mettle, maybe choose one that isn't so impossibly large? You can't win like that. It's not like you're gonna have elastic ropes to bounce off of in the real world. I like what it does for her character because it shows how resourceful she is, but how is she supposed to take this guy down in a normal situation? I hate to nitpick. That's a lie, I love to nitpick. Judging by those gloves, this is a boxing match in which kicks are illegal and drop kicks are definitely illegal. Using the ropes to build momentum for a punch is also illegal, so if this did anything for her, it would just get her disqualified. And yeah, I know. It's not exactly what the illegal move is, but it's pretty close, She's not using the ropes to throw a punch, she's using them to throw a kick, but I'm pretty sure the only reason that isn't in the rules explicitly is because the people who made them weren't counting on anyone comboing up cheats. I mean, it's not like she could have even won if she did fight fair. Rabbit punches are illegal, so, God, that was a dumb fucking joke. Oh my god, that's the level my comedy is at already. Oh my god. Also, I cannot believe she had enough momentum to force his guarding hand back into his own face hard enough it knocked him out cold. It's a rabbit fighting a rhino. If they wanted me to believe this, they needed to put her up against a smaller animal.
I love it, it's the pre-match spy for the big super gay weight title fight, eh?
So after graduation, she's about to leave for the city for her new post. This may seem like an odd place in the video to mention this, but the writers of this movie initially had another version planned, which was much darker tonally. In this version, predators all had to wear shock collars that activated if they got too happy or angry or just emotional in general. And according to the writers, they changed it because it was too dark and the place felt like an oppressive police state.
Ultimately, the collars really felt negative in a way that you didn't like the world.
Zootopia was this kind of oppressive police state.
And they wanted you to root for the city from the very beginning, so they turned the movie into this for those reasons. And then they made it so that the people in this world are so prejudiced that there are products designed to repel specific species of predator.
Oh, for goodness sake.
If you wanted me to root for the city, maybe don't show me that the people living in it are so prejudiced that products like this are just a common thing you can pick up. Because at this point in the movie, I'm still forming impressions of this world, and if you want it to be a good one, maybe keep this sort of stuff off to the sideline for a while. Maybe have her father sneak it into her bag so she never even knew it was with her until it was too late. At which point she actually does start to take it on her everyday patrol without thinking about the consequences.
Excuse me? Down here?
How are you, as the first face everyone sees as they come through the door of the police headquarters for the whole city, allowed to eat cereal at your desk? Do the police just not care?
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Also, am I supposed to believe that Clawhauser, this guy, beat his opponent in the boxing match? I mean, I'm not saying it's completely impossible. Miracles happen occasionally, right? Maybe you only have to pass most of the tests to complete basic training. Then again, I can believe he just fell on him and pinned him. And yeah, I know, wrestling is illegal in boxing, but we've also seen they clearly don't care about the rules. And the idea of this guy passing one of those physicals without cheating is a level of comedy that few writers are able to achieve.
Goodness.
Once we get to the roll call, Judy sitting and immediately sinking below the desk is a nice bit of visual comedy, but it also reinforces her position here as that of an outsider. She is an officer, sure, but she doesn't belong yet, and that's going to be very clear by the end of this scene. After some introductions, the chief gets down to business and sets up that over the past few weeks across the city there have been mammals going missing with no explanation. And then he decides to just keep one of the case files without assigning anyone to it.
Parking duty. Dismissed.
He literally just said it's priority one, but apparently it can wait. I mean, there's literally an officer right there who wants to take the case, but I'll just hold on to this one for a while. You could make the argument that he just thinks she can't handle real work, but if he wants her gone, which is the case as we find out later,
You strike out. You resign.
why not just give her the case? She must be competent if she's made it this far, but if you think she's going to fail anyway, it'll give you an excuse to get rid of her when she does. And on the off chance that she does manage to solve it, that only benefits you, but no, he simply keeps it for himself.
100 tickets. I'm not gonna write 100 tickets. I'm gonna write 200 tickets. Before noon.
So Judy heads out on meter maid duty. We get a lot of quick-fire jokes that are a combination of actual written jokes and purely visual gags. And this is an aspect I have basically almost no criticism for. The comedy in this movie is a huge redeeming factor. And I'm convinced that it's one of the biggest reasons why people walk away liking it so much, because it distracts you from everything that doesn't work. I know it distracted me the first time I watched it.
Hey, watch where you're going, Fox.
Hey, there he is, possibly the only character I actually like in this movie.
And I don't want any trouble in here. So hit the road.
This still gets me every time. She was about to Sam Fisher right up on him and pepper spray him for trying to buy ice cream. Oh yeah, that's gonna go down real well on your first day. When the chief said he wanted to focus on kidnappings, did you not realize he meant solving them? Why is it only fine that he's trying to buy ice cream when he's with a kid? Like, woman, why is your default to go into combat mode? The beginning of this scene makes her look pretty neurotic, and I understand that the point is to show she's overly judgmental of Nick because of his species, but immediately leaping to her preparing to pepper spray him is well over the top of what I imagine you would want to portray this early in the movie. At most, she should put her hand closer to the spray, not pop it open ready to go as she advances on him from behind. Oh hey, his trunk overhangs the desk like people do with their hands. It's a nice detail.
I'm an officer.
So Judy manages to finagle a situation that allows Nick to get what he wants by pointing out health code violations in the shop, but promising not to report them if they fix the issues and serve him. So now we're seeing that she's a quick thinker as well. My only problem with this is, are these people blind? At least when you get a dodgy takeaway, they have the decency to hide what they're putting in it. It makes no sense that the people here wouldn't know what they're eating because you can literally see what they're doing from any position in the room. Again, small issue, but an issue nonetheless, because this isn't something the shop owner would have ever been able to get away with if this is the way he's going about it. Once they get outside, there's a line I really do like here, where she calls him a great dad and articulate. Like it's high praise, and he follows it up with,
It's rare that I find someone so non-patronizing.
Which is a great response, because it reinforces her obliviousness to how condescending she's being. Because he basically just insulted her to her face and she didn't even realize.
Wow.
This is what really annoys me about this script. This line is good. The people who wrote it can clearly write good dialogue with more going on beyond what's literally being said. But very, very soon, this movie will just completely fall apart and keep getting worse the longer it goes.
Well, this should be good.
A line like this tells me we could have had a good movie and it just didn't happen. After the ice cream parlor, Judy happens to run into them again in Sahara Square and ends up stalking them all over town to figure out what's actually going on. But if they believe they've gotten away with it, why is Finnick still pretending to be 6? Him doing that while driving is only going to look more suspicious.
And I'm not the liar. He is.
Fucking Quicksilver over here. The rest of this scene is basically just Judy trying and failing to argue with Nick. There's another nice detail here that they all give the porcupine a wide berth for obvious reasons. Like I said, this movie is very charming and has a lot of great details in the animation and the environments. Can't wait for the main story to come into play. And if you pay attention to all those signs and posters and flyers in the background of all these shots, they're all puns based on some real-world play or band or brand. And the reason I'm pointing all this out is not because I think it's impressive or anything. It's because if you haven't already realized it, you soon will, just how much effort and attention was put into so many aspects of this movie, except the script. Meaning that all this effort is sadly wasted because the writers seemingly didn't care at all. But hey, we're not there yet, and so far this movie's doing pretty alright for plot and character. She goes home, and after having an embarrassing call with her parents, she resolves to do better tomorrow.
Oh, she's not a real cop. Our prayers have been answered.
Before moving on, I would just like to mention that although I don't think much of the song, the track that plays in this scene is diegetic because it's the least depressing thing she could find on the radio.
Hey, Bunny, turn down that depressing music.
It's a joke I really like that's made funnier by how she gets angry at the radio for playing depressing songs, like it knows she's in a bad mood or something. I won't be mentioning the comedy too often from here on out because it would basically just be me saying over and over again how well written and delivered a lot of the jokes are. As she begins her next day, Judy gets involved in a foot chase over some shoplifting that eventually leads her to this place. What struck me about this scene is that these buildings have no foundation. Does that mean that just a strong breeze could knock them over? Or, an invader? If a tornado hits, are all these guys just cool with their houses and, by extension, their families going sailing off into the sky? Like, I'm serious here. Can all these buildings just fly away in a strong breeze? What if a large animal you pissed off jumped the fence and just shot puts your house into the street to get back at you? Why do they have no foundation? How do you build... You know what, I should just move on because we're getting closer to some of the bigger issues, and before long, the progress throughout this movie is going to really slow down as the scenes get worse. Why is she the only one with eyes? They're the same species. What happened to... Did she suck their souls out or something? Okay, that didn't happen. She was miles away just as the donut was about to crush this woman before she even noticed what was happening. I was fine with Nick moving like Quicksilver for a joke because it had literally no impact on the story. But the movie better stick to Judy being the Flash. Well, not like that. It had better be consistent with how fast she can move, but it won't be. This is just bad editing to make the scene more tense, but all it does on subsequent viewings is make me laugh. Because she was crushed by that donut and the movie cheated to allow Judy to save her. Upon her return, the chief is less than pleased with her performance.
Life isn't some cartoon musical where you sing a little song and your insipid dreams magically come true.
Are you serious?
Okay, this is such a tiny thing, but it really pisses me off. Insipid is just the wrong word to use here, and they couldn't even be bothered to look that up. Insipid is basically just a synonym for dull. In what world is wanting to be a police officer, help people, investigate crime scenes, and arrest criminals a dull dream? You can't even make the argument that he would think that because this is the police chief. If anyone is going to think policing is an insipid career, it won't be him. It feels as though the writers chose insipid because it makes him sound more articulate. I tend to enjoy characters that use unusual words when they speak because there are plenty of words that have very specific meanings that you rarely see used. mostly because they have very specific meanings. The reason I like when characters do this is because sometimes single words can convey concisely what they mean just as well as, if not better than, a full sentence. If a writer wants their character to describe something as ancient and also wants the description to carry a biblical connotation, well, they could spend a sentence describing it that way, or they could simply call it antediluvian, to be more concise, because that word means exactly that.
We unearthed that damnable portal of antediluvian evil.
And it makes the character sound more intelligent. I may have to look up what it means, but when I do, it will make complete sense as to why the character used that word. Here, the chief using insipid just confused me when I was watching this movie, because what that word means doesn't match at all what he's describing. So yeah, this is a pretty minor writing criticism, but people just throwing big words into their writing randomly is something that really bugs me. Because if you're doing it to try and sound smart, but the word you use doesn't fit that situation, then it has the exact opposite effect. Even worse, this stands out clearly on subsequent views as an incompetent word choice because the writers aren't trying to characterize him as incompetent or stupid, but they are succeeding. I mean, they're writers, supposedly. Is it really too much to ask that they pay attention to the word choice in their script? The big guy chews her out some more, she asks again for the remaining missing mammal case, and then...
Just heard Officer Hops is taking the case.
Ooh, how convenient!
If Bellwether, who had no idea that Judy would be here, had arrived 5 minutes later, Judy would have just been assigned back to parking duty. At the very least, it wouldn't be convenient if she'd arrived early, because regardless of whether the chief had seen her or Judy first, Otterton still would have busted in to try and get the police to track her husband down, and Judy would have been there for it either way. But just a few minutes late, and Judy would have just been fired and wouldn't be working this case.
You're fired.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit?
Just kidding.
At the very least, changing it so that Bellwether comes here with Otterton to try and get the police to look closer at her husband's case would make this slightly less convenient. But as it stands, we have the convenience that Otterton arrives just as Judy's getting chewed out, and then Bellwether also arrives at the exact perfect time to actually get her on the case.
Mammal Inclusion Initiative is really starting to pay off.
That version of events I just made up isn't good. It's still got convenience in it, but it runs a little smoother. And Bellwether would still be able to report it to the mayor, which I assume is why she's here in the first place. I mean, why else would the assistant mayor be at Police HQ on the chief's floor if not to meet with him in the mayor's stead?
Alright, bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Wait a minute. So she doesn't have any business with the chief? She was just passing by his door to go somewhere else.
The day begins as it means to continue, I see. Miserably!
Oh god, I gave this movie too much credit. So in reality, if she hadn't been passing by here at this exact minute, at this exact moment, Judy would have been screwed. Because Otterton is only waiting outside for less than a minute. Wow.
Popsicle. It means I have a lead.
Need I even say that there is an incredibly low chance that the last person to talk to Otterton before he got kidnapped would be the one person that Judy just so happened to make a connection with since moving to the city. And that he would just so happen to be in the corner of this shot, and just like in the previous scene, this movie had a chance to lessen the convenience slightly, and they didn't take it. But before we deal with the convenience, let's just set up how stupid this scenario even is. The case file Judy has to work with is incredibly small. There's no notes on where he might have been before this moment, there are no notes on where he might be from people he's close with or anything. And for some reason, she's just working from a case file. This shot was taken from a CCTV camera. Surely the first step any normal person, especially a police officer, would take would be to look at that footage to see if there's anything useful. Instead, Judy doesn't even think of that. She's treating it like it's a non-option when it should be her first stop. Then we get on to the bigger problem of this scene. The convenience. The sheer convenience of this, that Nick just so happens to be in the corner of this shot, and Otterton is holding something that could literally only have been sold by him. It's a completely unique identifier that only he sells. At the very least, if his face were in the shot, I could give the movie a point, because then, regardless of whether or not he had bought a popsicle from him, she would still know who she's looking for. Instead, she only manages to make progress here because Otterton just so happens to be holding a popsicle at this exact moment. A few minutes later and that thing would have melted. I swear, this movie just loves its time-based conveniences. It'd be preferable that the popsicle is what clues her into the fact that Nick met Otterton just before he was kidnapped, and then she would look at the footage to confirm it. In a better written story, she would obviously be going to look at the camera footage anyway, and seeing the popsicle would just be a neat detail for the audience that would get us thinking, oh, I know who sold him that, before it's actually confirmed, but oh well. I mean, seriously, what are the odds that out of the hundreds of thousands, probably millions if we're being realistic, of people that live in this city, she would meet with a scam artist on her very first day who also happened to be one of the last people to see a missing mammal in a case she chanced her way into on her second day? I don't have a maths degree, but I'm just gonna guess quite low.
Shut up, bitches!
Hi! Hello? It's me again!
You found him? You found him. Within what I'm going to guess is a couple of hours in a city this big, when we know that he travels all over whenever he needs to for whatever he needs to.
With luck like yours, I'm surprised them bullets didn't just turn right around and climb back into the gun.
Did you just boot my stroller?
I really do love the comedy in this movie. I'm telling you, just picture how this movie would look without it. It is the main thing holding the story up.
Nicholas Wilde, you are under arrest.
For what? Hurting your feelings?
Felony tax evasion.
Is she psychic? She had no idea that he'd be admitting to how much she made. Did she just get insanely lucky that he just so happened to tell her how much he makes all year round again? Gotta say, she's already gotten 2 big lucky breaks. Sorry, 3 if we also count how she actually got this case in the first place. If he hadn't happened to say this, she'd have nothing on him, and yes, it's clear that she was goading him into saying it, but my point is that if this fails, she's got nothing, meaning this is just luck pushing the plot again, which is already starting to fall apart, and we haven't even really gotten started yet. Okay, next scene. The Naturalist Club. She's going here based on a lead that Nick has given her, hoping it'll open
The pleasure pool.
You cretin!
Maybe I can just pixelate the screen. That'll work. Yeah, actually, you know what? That makes it look arguably worse. Never mind.
Oh my. If I can't see it, it can't hurt me.
The act takes them to Nangi, who is an elephant who supposedly remembers everything. In fact, he does, and although they play his exceptional memory for jokes, that doesn't change the fact that this is, once again, another convenience. They just keep getting bigger, and trust me, that trend is only going to continue. I would have so much less of a problem with this if it were just used to get the case started, but there have already been multiple big conveniences to get us to this point, so I'm having real trouble accepting that there'd be someone with such an encyclopedic knowledge of everything that went on 2 weeks ago, including what the person was wearing, despite the fact he apparently doesn't care for clothes.
He was wearing a green cable knit sweater vest and a new pair of corduroy slacks.
I would be so much more okay with this if the scene were entirely the same, but he just didn't remember the license plate. Because then a little detective work might actually be in order. You know, Judy might have to use her supposedly big brain for once, but as it stands, everything she could ever want for this case has just been dropped into her lap with little to no effort or intelligence on her part.
What we really need is some kind of remote link to the hologram disc projection system. What, like this one? What a stroke of luck!
How the police have failed to make any progress in this disappearance so far makes no sense when the information is literally waiting right there for them. All they had to do was ask. So she gets the plate, and once Nick tries to get away...
I can't run a plate. Ooh, I'm not in the system yet. If only there were a moron around who were up to the task.
Why do you need him anymore? Just ask someone at the station to do it on your behalf. Yeah, sure, you're not in the system yet, but they are. If you explained that you're working on one of the missing mammal cases, they're going to accommodate you. Even if a few of them can't be bothered, does the movie seriously expect me to believe that literally every officer in the entire police station isn't going to help her? Even if that were true, she doesn't know that yet. There is literally no reason she shouldn't be calling back in at the police station, but instead she's going to turn to the con man for help. Even if you don't go to the police, you could call in at the DMV, like you literally do.
Officer Judy Hobbs, CPD, how are you?
Tell them it's police business to fast-track the process and be out of there as soon as possible. She doesn't need him, but the movie needs him to remain a part of the plot, and so he shall. And the way this insane plot point is accommodated is by having Judy act like a moron and think she needs to rely on Nick's friend at the DMV. Great, I hate it. Hold on a second. She pulled his tax records earlier in this movie. That's how she even got him here in the first place. How exactly did she manage that when she isn't in the system yet? I guess she got somebody to pull his info for her. How about you just go to that guy again, you fucking lemon? You don't need him.
Actually, I just remembered I have a pal at the DMV.
Oh god. You don't need a pal at the DMV. You don't need Nick. If you're gonna go there instead of the police station, just tell them it's important police business and show your badge. They're not gonna stand in your way.
Please,
Pumped.
If only there'd been another way.
Closed. Great.
And I will bet you don't have a warrant to get in.
After a quick in-and-out visit,
It's night?
she eventually gets the plate and it leads her to Tundra Town. And we're about to hit the point at which this movie really starts to, fall off a cliff. So far, there have certainly been ways in which it could have been made better, but from here on out it becomes legitimately difficult to think of ways in which this movie could have been made worse.
What is your problem?
As they arrive, Judy realizes that she doesn't actually have a warrant to get in, and so tricks Nick into breaking in for her, which I'm pretty certain is entrapment. At the very least, she never directly threatens to prosecute him for it, but she's already threatened him with tax evasion. So you could definitely make the argument here that her turning him in for this as well is implicit, which really conflicts with her characterization so far. She has been willing to bend the law somewhat up to this point, but only in very minor ways, like when she lets the ice cream vendor off with a warning as long as he corrects his mistake and serves Nick. You don't bat an eye when she gets him for tax evasion because that's a crime he's already committed. But this is something that he never would have done in the first place if she hadn't tricked him. At best, you can argue this makes her morally grey, because she is at least doing it for a good reason, despite how immoral it is. You could argue that this is something she's only doing because of her bias against foxes. But that idea is never brought up in reference to this event again, it's simply moved past and forgotten. So if that was their intent with this moment, it was pretty badly communicated. What makes this more frustrating is that it could have been a great moment to look back on later once the story's developed further. In a better written movie, this would be one of the moments that Nick looks back on as evidence that Judy looks down on him because he's a fox, when at the time he simply shrugged it off as her doing what she needed to.
Hey.
They go to investigate the cars, which are not locked. They aren't locked. They don't lock the cars. The criminal organization these cars belong to don't lock them at night. I mean, sure, they're in a secure compound, but that'd be like not locking the doors to your house because you live in a gated community. If you don't lock the cars, all that does is make it easier for somebody to sneak a recording device inside, or, sneak inside in general. They go looking for clues, and as luck would have it, the very first car they choose just so happens to have the seats ripped up and Otterson's driving license still on the floor inside. So, I'm gonna come clean here. I've never actually been part of an organized crime syndicate. Shocking, I know. I mean, if I were a mafia boss and something happened to someone on my payroll, the first thing I would do is remove any incriminating evidence that could implicate me. Especially if there was some that could link them back to me. I shouldn't be outthinking the mob in this world. That shouldn't be possible. Almost immediately afterwards, they get captured and taken for a ride, where Nick reveals why he is so nervous about the prospect of meeting Mr. Big, the resident dumbass who decided it was a good idea to leave the doors on his limos unlocked. Also mafia boss.
I may have sold him a very expensive wool rug that was made from the fur of a skunk. But...
Okay, here I have to ask, what exactly is Nick's character supposed to be? Because at first, I took him to be a quick-thinking, street-smart hustler who can make the best of a bad situation and who knows people and how to manipulate them. If he was to try and swindle the mob boss in this city, why would he try and con him into buying something that literally wouldn't even pass as a wool rug to the blind? Is he stupid? Is that what the movie is telling me? Because that's not the impression I got, and I'm already struggling to see how this action is in any way going to fit in with his characterization.
I welcomed you into my home. We broke bread together. Grandmama made you a cannoli.
Okay, now Nick just sounds actually insane. You got in good with the mob boss, and you decided to try and rip him off for so little money that you had to go back to selling popsicles. If you're gonna ruin this relationship, you do it for something that sets you up for life, or at the very least, close to it.
I'm on the Emmett Otterton case, and my evidence puts him in your car. So intimidate me all you want. I'm going to find out what you did to that otter if it's the last thing I do.
How stupid can somebody be to say that?
Again, I thought these characters were supposed to be intelligent, right? I thought that was the point of the character dynamic, that it was a battle of wits between two people who really didn't want to work together and just have to figure it out as they go. This isn't just a bad move on her part, this is quite possibly the worst move she could have ever made. I thought I'd gathered that Nick was more street smart and will lie and cheat to get his way, while Judy is more book smart and uses the law and technicalities to get hers. But how do you ever pass top of your class if you're also airheaded enough to do this? You're alone, and you're with a civilian that you brought into this situation against his will. A morally good character, any morally good character, would be extremely concerned with getting Nick out safely in this scenario. And her lack of care for him moves her from being morally grey at best firmly into morally black territory. So that's already two big knocks against the intelligence of these characters, but don't worry. It gets worse. Because she still has her police radio. I can see it right there on her belt. They didn't take her radio, so now the mob is retarded as well. She doesn't even try using it, and it's not as if she'd even have to say anything. Just holding the transmit button down long enough would send a message that you're in trouble given what you're talking about. And if Nick knows who Mr. Big is, then the police would too, and they would definitely know where he lives. All she'd have to do is stall for time, but she's too stupid to even do that. Which brings me to my next point. She seems to have absolutely zero care for either her own life or the life of the civilian that she roped into this. She makes no effort to bargain for Nick's life before threatening the boss, which would be something you'd expect her to do, seeing as she's a cop and supposedly morally upstanding. Having your hero characters care about innocent lives is one of the easiest ways to signal that they are virtuous. Probably the easiest. And Nick has already screwed this guy over once and is a criminal, so her trying to defend him would only make her come across as even more virtuous, but they just don't do it.
But wait! There's more!
And then we have the fundamental issue at the core of all of this, which is that these two are even here in the first place. These goons caught two trespassers on their property and decided to immediately bring them to the boss's house? Nick I can understand, because he's got history. But Judy is literally wearing a police uniform, and they didn't think twice about bringing her before the boss, somebody they're supposed to protect. What makes this part even worse is that Nick tries to do some desperate damage control here.
Mime? She is a mime. This mime cannot speak. You can't speak if you're a mime.
And what does she do? She just ignores him.
No, I am a cop.
Why are you the way that you are?
I'm still baffled as to why the writers chose to make her this thick-headed in this scene alone. There's a certain level of steadfast determination that can come across as endearing in characters. But when you take that trait too far, it loops all the way back around and they can come across as morally righteous or idiotic or both due to their unwillingness to ever back down, even in the face of absolute failure or certain death. Writing Judy this way just makes it extremely difficult for me to connect with her, because this isn't a situation that she can get out of without being extremely careful about what she does and doesn't reveal to these people. But instead, she just charges ahead blindly and nearly gets them both killed. This isn't some tragic moment where a character realizes that they've failed and yet chooses to stand and fight, despite knowing they will probably die. If she died here, there wouldn't be anything meaningful about it. She would have just gotten herself, and let's not forget, a civilian, killed because she was unable to resist the urge to threaten the one man in the room with that power. Yes, he has a lead that she wants. But the only move that an intelligent person would make here is no move. Just shut the fuck up.
Sir, I am a cop.
Mime? She is a mime.
No, I am a cop. And I'm on the Emmett Otterton case.
Stop talking, stop talking, stop talking.
And my evidence puts him in your car.
Shut up! Shut it! Shut up!
Obviously, what with her being a galaxy brain and all, she doesn't. And lo and behold.
Awesome. Whoa! I didn't see nothing. I'm not saying nothing.
And that's that.
This is the end of the first part of this series. I don't know exactly how many parts it's going to end up being, but I've already finished the script. So far, we're 50 minutes into this movie. You might say things have gone pretty fast, right? The main content of the movie is over at the 1 hour and 36 mark, with the rest being dedicated to an in-universe credits sequence. And so far, I am 7,500 words into my 30,000 word script. I was not exaggerating a fucking word when I said that this movie gets exponentially worse the longer it goes. And the best part of all this is that I will freely admit, I included some criticisms in this part that are very minor, like the tangents about word choice. From the next part onwards, almost every criticism I make is going to be something that poses either massive damage to the script if it doesn't break it entirely. I would say that just based on her willingness to sell Nick out here, that Judy's been character assassinated already. But it's gonna get much worse. Not just for her, but for almost every other character in the movie. Well, except Nick, of course. But I'm relatively convinced the only reason he managed to escape being character assassinated is because he doesn't get much focus. Anyway, that's it. I'm done for now. Bye.
Fuck you all up the wrong one. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.
That was better than IMAX Inception.
Enormous criminal.